Was that not language that you just heard? So I think that would be real language what you just heard. I wanted to show that. So I think that if you take the history of like the English language, how it's attended so many brutalities, so many brutal experiences, so many brutal realities, so many brutal societies, so many brutal paradigms, it can be appreciated as being a part of, or at least attending, a lot of slavery and economic deprivation and inequity. So from that standpoint, I would appreciate it as a slave dialect, even though you have different tiers of privilege that would enjoy it, or would enjoy people, different tiers of enjoying privilege within slave societies of slavery. If one thing is corrupt, the whole thing is corrupt, because the none are free until all are free. Some might be privileged, but none are free until all are free. So, but what you heard there, those birds like that, that might be real language, but also other human languages. So when I say see John Rob Steve to pay Paul and get caught by Saul and pay Steve and Saul and Paul with his backside and take a free ride with Joe and Clyde. That's like the English language, and there's still some beautiful things about the English language and things that can be conveyed in the English language, and some of the broadness of the speakers would collaborate to make the quality or what's viable with it. So I don't mean to, because we can't throw out we can't throw out the value with it. We can't throw out the last of the pizza in the pizza box. But what you heard with those birds like that, I would appreciate that as real language, if anything. How much more was that beautiful, those birds in the beginning of this video, than these words I'm saying out my mouth with English. But then if you take other dialects like maybe Arabic, like when I said Allah like that, or maybe even in Spanish, I think that according to Taj Creek Bay, a lot of people really look straight past the contact of the Moorish people and Spain in the past. And so from that standpoint, Spanish is appreciated as Moorish Latin according to Taj Creek Bay, and other people wouldn't find it. No, so you appreciate that that it's considered in the public, in the standard history that's presented to students in Western societies, in societies informed by Western societies with their curriculum, that Christopher Columbus discovered America. Now, if you appreciate how much logistics would be concerned in taking a van full of grown-ass men to the next town over without them fighting and getting over on each other in the van ride and causing a problem and getting stuck in the bathroom at the gas station, how many logistical concerns could you come across just taking a group of men across the state? Now we're to believe that he took this many men in a boat across great distances by chance and landed on the shore of a new land by chance, was able to survive that, sustain that, and have enough wherewithal. A lot of people think wherewithal means your state of mind, but wherewithal actually means your resources. He had enough wherewithal to come back safely to where he came from where the ship was chartered, designated from. So the ship was chartered. So the trip was chartered, but landed on a new discovery of a new land that was ostensibly not chartered as part of the charter, and then chartered itself back to where it had actually been chartered from. So it was chartered, and then it got off of charter, but then it was able to charter itself back and report back. What group of people were known to have seafaring capability? We can appreciate there'd be knowledge to attend seafaring capability, just because knowledge attends capability likely. And then what group of seafaring people were also documented as having contact with Spain around that time? Was that not the Moorish people? So would not the Moorish people have something, if anything, to do with the discovery, or at least the knowledge of a new land far away? So that's just an example of how you can just logically put things together that we might not have all the stories sometimes. But and I'm not saying I do either, but language is really beautiful, and you could say on a deeper sense, if birds can communicate like that, and can speak that eloquently, which I think that's far more eloquent than anything that we say. So some people say, like, can the birds really understand each other? No, can we really understand each other would be the real question, because if you hear that, how can they not be understanding each other, communing like that, fellowshipping like that? And then how can we actually be communicating the way that we talk? But some people are smooth with English, so I can't say that. You got players, you got maybe people from like rural backgrounds, you got people from educated backgrounds. The English language can be used excellently. Anything can be used excellently because life is creative. But if you appreciate how sublime language can be within, but more so outside of the context of what language you speak, you can see that language really is sublime. You could even appreciate the wind blowing through the trees as like a higher tier of language past what we appreciate as like animals. So that's how sublime animals can communicate with something like language. How could something that has a spiritual component or spiritual dimension beyond what corresponds to a physical animal body, how eloquent could that communicate? The wind, the trees, the smells, which you could also say that smell is a form of communication and therefore language. So you can really say that maybe this reality is fashioned by the combination of a thought in verbal form. But verbal form isn't limited to see Jane run, stuff like that. But that's not it either. But what I wanted to say is that my real message was that one thing that's significant is appreciating just more things that are significant. And I'm not putting these as like a limit or a cap by any means, because I'm not capable of putting a limit on something like that. But one would be like the overlap between things that are appearing in our experience, such as words that are normally part of our vocabulary, and actual experiences. So I had made that video about RAS, reticular activation system, and then I bumped into a man today, and we were having a discussion, and he referenced that word RAS, and I knew exactly what he was referring to because I was actually planning on doing a video today about RAS, and I had mentioned in a previous video. So that's an example of how things that I have talked about publicly, that is put into the ethers, the online ethers are still the ethers, and then thought in my heart, which my head and my heart, my mind, will, emotions, my heart is still within the realm of the ethers on a subtle level, because speech is still speech whether it's enunciated. And so Arthur Avalon had said you have causal speech, subtle speech, and gross speech. What you hear coming out of my mouth is gross speech, but it had been subtle before that, and then had been causal before that. In the greatest terms of the ethers, the greatest of hearers, if what is great can speak as eloquently as the birds or the wind, how fine could it also hear? Not the least of which our heart, which is still within the ethers. So that he would reference that word was significant, and that'd be another thing to appreciate in our reality, is patterns and coincidences, which are so very profound, I think. And they maybe say more. That's what I was actually going with talking about the planes, is that the patterns are significant. But he mentioned RAS, and he was taken aback that a brother on a city bus with a guitar would know exactly what he was referring to with RAS, and had made a video within the last few days. He said he had not come across one but a professional in life with like a clinical background and training to use that word, and even still that word wouldn't appear unless outside of like clinical notes or something like that. So he was taken aback that a brother on the street level would know what he's talking about. And I'm not trying to flex with that, but I'm saying that that's an example of a word having significance in our experience, first in my mind and with content I'm uploading, but then my lived experience. And it also made something of a connection and inroad because he was impressed with that. But I actually wanted to do another video more so about the RAS that I'm going to come back with.